So here we are today with my friend Alyse Nelson. Alyse is the CEO of Vital Voices. Vital Voices is the organization that I'm on the board on, and that is dearest to my heart. Vital Voices, what would you say, Alyse? That is the #1 global network for women's leaders?
I'd say the most powerful, the most diverse network of women leaders around the world who are very much on the front lines of change.
So you speak so well, Alyse, so I'm going to let you speak a lot. So tell us, what is Vital Voices? When was it created? Very quickly, what is it doing now? And how can people get involved?
So Vital Voices was founded on the heels of the UN Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing, China, where Hillary made that great speech, women's rights are human rights are women's rights once and for all.
And it was the first women's leader meeting, correct?
It was the Fourth World Conference, so the fourth, but it was the largest, the most.
And it was in Beijing in
China,
in 1995.
25 years ago.
Hillary Clinton was the first lady, and she got there, and that's when she said, women's rights
are human rights.
Women's rights are human's right. And that was major. And I know that when she came back from this incredible meeting, and by the way, we should say that when we talk about women's leaders, it's not prime minister, it's women leaders in their own community. And very often they're very small leaders, but they're very powerful leaders. And when you put this leadership in together and you create a community of those leaders, all of a sudden you get incredible power. And I know that Hillary told me that after she left, this extraordinary thing that had happened with so much energy and vitality, she came back and she looked at her chief of staff, Milan Verveer, and she said, we cannot let this go back like a flat souffle. We have to go on, right? And that's when Vital Voices was created, and it was at first governmental and then special.
And then we became a nonprofit,
Yes, and you were, tell us you were a little girl, you were an intern. Tell us your story.
Well, actually, when I was in college, between my junior and senior year, I heard about the UN Fourth World Conference on Women, in Beijing, China. And it was going to be a gathering of thousands upon thousands of women. They thought 55,000 women from around the world. And you think about it, Diane, back then, if you wanted to know about your place in the world as a young woman, in my 20s, right, still in college, you had to go there. You couldn't read books about it. You couldn't read articles. It wasn't front page news. I mean, still isn't, but at least we have a lot more exposure now, a lot more studies. And so I got my ticket and I went to the conference. I actually didn't get the right kind of visa because the Chinese organizing committee, the Chinese government was trying to keep people, activists out. But I was able to sort of sneak in. It's a longer story. But for me, it was transformative. Particularly Hillary's speech, because I recognized when she spoke that she spoke for so many women whose voices had never been heard, and that she put these issues on the world stage because she knew if she went there and she gave that speech, which really called out so many human rights violations against women, that the world would listen because, of who was speaking, right? And there was a lot of anticipation for what she was going to say or not say, and her speech was spot on. And I think me as a young woman sitting there listening, I thought, okay, why did I want to come to this gathering? Why did I feel so compelled? And I realized in that moment that, okay, I don't have as powerful a voice as Hillary Clinton, but I have a voice and I can use that voice to speak for those who have no voice. I can, take the power that I have, that voice that I have, and expand upon it and use it. And that's really when I decided to commit my life to working to advance the role of women around the world.
So what is Vital Voices today?
So at Vital Voices, we search the world for women who have a daring vision for change. And then we invest in her through training, mentoring, a network of her peers, financial support, visibility to take that vision that she has to scale. So it could be she has started a program to combat human trafficking, right? And when we meet her, she's serving a couple hundred women, but she really has a vision to work across the entire country to serve thousands of women. And we help her do that. We give her the tools to do that. But I think what's fundamental about Vital Voices that you don't find with a lot of development organizations is that we invest in her vision, her idea. You know, traditional models of development have been all about foreign nationals going into countries, development agencies going to countries and saying, we know your problems, we've got your solutions, right? Because it worked in the United States, of course it's going to work here. And it doesn't, it fails. And a lot of money, you know, billions of dollars has been wasted that way. When really what you need to do is put the resources and the support and your trust and belief in those leaders who are on the front lines every day and who understand those sort of cultural and I think, you know, they really understand the surrounds in their community and what they're dealing with. And so
I have been working with Vital Voices for a long time. I designed the logo with the two V's that were little birds because the voices are birds. We came up with a line that says, invest in women, save the world, or improve the world. And I have been, you know, so involved with so many of these women because the DVF Award every year allocates 2 awards, which is money and exposure, to 2 of women that you recommend from the Vital Voices network. So maybe we should talk about 1 or 2 of them. So just take the example and see what they have done. Which one should we do?
Boy, so many. Well, how about someone like Kekenya and Taya? I love Kekenya. She's so amazing.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So we met Kekenya in 2006. So, you know, we've been supporting her, and that's one of our hallmarks for many, many years, because we know change doesn't happen overnight. And the longer you support a leader, the more change she'll make. So when we met Kekenya, she came up to me and she told me this incredible story. She told me that she was raised in this community in the Masai Mara. It is called Anusaya.
Messiah, yeah.
Yeah. And in that community, girls are typically promised to be married at age 5. They're not married yet, but they know who they're going to marry at age 5, right?
How old was she when you met her?
When I met her, 2006, she would have been probably about late 20s, maybe 30 by that time, probably late 20s. Boy, yes, that was 15 years ago. Yes, she was late 20s. Wow. Anyway, so she's promised off to be married. But then also, once she goes through, once she has her first period, starts menstruating, she's taken out of school. That's what's supposed to happen in her community. And then she'd actually get married. She'd also go through the process of female circumcision, what's commonly referred to as female mutilation, FGM. And she decided she didn't want any of that. She didn't want to be married. She definitely did not want to be pulled out of school. She wanted to be a teacher. That was her dream, because she saw that teachers got up in the morning, they went to school, they dressed nice, they knew things, and she really admired her teacher. There were no other role models that were women. But what she saw is that her mother suffered incredible abuse from her father. And so she wanted a different life. But she realized she only had one bargaining chip. And that was really to say to her father, look, I will go and have this process of female genital mutilation, because I know if I don't go through it, it would bring shame to the family. But I will only do that if you promise me that I can stay in school and that I don't have to be married. And her father agreed. He said, okay, fine, reluctantly. So she finishes school all the way to like the equivalent of our high school in the United States. And now she has somehow gotten herself a scholarship to college in the United States, somehow, and believe me, there's no technology in a New Sion, but somehow she goes to some, internet cafe somehow and finds this out, applies and gets it. her father has now passed away. He was a terrible alcoholic, and he had passed away quite young, in his 40s. And so she has to go around to all the community and ask them if they will give their permission for her to fly away, but also if they'll all pool their money for a one-way ticket. And they do. They pool their money for this one-way ticket. And she goes and asks them, and they give the blessing, and she flies off. She goes to the United States. So fast forward number of years, I meet her, right? This is, probably 8 or so years later.
You meet her where?
I meet her at a conference, a women's conference. She's been brought there by Nike Foundation, because Nike Foundation was doing a lot of work supporting girls at the time, and they had met her. But they weren't exactly sure how to provide support for what she was doing. And so I meet her, and she tells me this story, which I think is amazing. And then she says, I am now a dissertation away from my PhD in education. But I have a dream, and my dream is to go back to my community and build the first ever girls' school, because girls other than me cannot go, to school past age 13. And so she decides, okay, I'm gonna go back to my community, but I really need your help. And so immediately, of course, I hear this story. It's so compelling, and I said, let's do it. And so Vital Voices starts supporting her. We provide her with training. We provide her with connections. You honor her with one of your great DVF awards. And then we help her to build that visibility. And then finally, we return to Kenya with her, and we break ground where she's going to develop the school. And it was so funny, Diane, because I remember that day, all these men coming up to me from her village. And all of them saying, well, I'm Kekenya's brother, I'm Kekenya's uncle, I'm Kekenya's father. Like, everyone wanted to have a connection with her. And I remember when that happened, I thought, that's it, she's broken through. Because the hardest thing to change is culture, is the way that people believe.
Perceive you.
Right.
And all of a sudden, I know. And that
school, she has 500 girls who've gone through that school, but she's trained thousands of community members in girls' rights. And I asked her recently, how she's changed culture. And she was telling me that every single girl who goes through that school, their parents have to sign an agreement saying that the girl will not have to go through FGM, and she will not be paid off early. She can't be married.
God bless. But every one of the women of Vital Voices, every one of them is a story. Everyone is a novel. And what is wonderful is that first they do it for themselves, and then they become a leader, which is very much, it's that is, and the putting them together, the community of, because when I remember I got involved in Vital Voices, and I gave money to Vital Voices, I agreed to go on the board with Vital Voices. But when I meet the Vital Voices women, I always ask them, what did Vital Voices do for you? And they always said, without Vital Voices, we would be no one. And Vital Voices is a very unique organization because it deals with the unique human being. It feeds the unique personality. It identifies them. I think you are the best identifier of women's leaders in the world. And you identify them, and then you give them confidence, you teach them, you support them, and then they become bigger and bigger in their own community. So as they become leaders, they really are forming others in their community to be leaders. And that kind of falling, that kind of pyramid is what I think is so unique about Vital Voices. So people should go on vitalvoices.com. What should they do? Now
Vitalvoices.org. Vitalvoices.org. Yeah.
Okay. And then
what? A member of Vital Voices.
Okay, so how do you become a member of Vital Voices?
Sign up, and we appreciate a donation, a monthly donation, but you can certainly sign up for our newsletter otherwise. But to become part of the community, you get access to discussions with women like Kenya or other women around the world. You learn about what is the latest news of what's going on for women. How are women dealing with the current pandemic, the current crisis that we're in? Really different perspectives, but also just connecting in with this phenomenal community. What I should mention, Diane, is that, you know, we tell the one story of Kenya, but there are 18,000 women across 182 countries around the world who are part of the Vital Voices Network.
Wow. Say that number again.
18,000 women across 182 countries and territories, including the United States. But each of these women, it's so important to understand, behind them are thousands that they are impacting, that they are supporting. And now we've been around for 23 years, but we don't ever lose sight of anyone, right? We continue to support them because we know leadership is a journey. It's not a final destination.
And we had the women involved in politics, right? In many countries. You have women involved in domestic violence. A lot of that.
Domestic violence, yes.
I mean, for example, Pamela Castro.
Yes.
Pamela Castro out of Brazil was a girl that started using her voice and fighting against violence with women by painting billboards, right? A graffiti.
Yeah.
She became an artist.
So Pamela, what's amazing about Pamela is that she herself was a victim of domestic violence, but she didn't even know that there was a word called domestic violence. And also she didn't know that in 2006, a law came onto the books that said that domestic violence was a crime. It's called the Maria de Pena law, named after a woman who was beaten by her husband and shot in Brazil. And so Pamela, you know, once she got out of that relationship, she took to the streets and did the only thing that she knew how to do, which was paint. And what she knew is that in her communities, in the poor favelas, the slums of Rio, that many people did not read, and they certainly did not know that there was a law or even a word that described violence against women. So women didn't know that they too had human rights. And so she painted these incredible murals to catch people's attention, and again, to change behavior, to allow women to see we have rights, you should respect us, but also to get into people's heads, to get into men's heads. She works a lot with police officers to say, look, you know, there's a law, you need to do something about it. So she's had a tremendous impact, and I think really has made social activism and women's rights cool among young people, because she's so cool, as you know.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. So that's why, you know, it matches so well with the DVF award, because the DVF award gives this award to women who have had the strength to fight, the courage to survive, and the leadership to inspire. And
I love that, Diane. I love that.
I know. So, and that's what it is, you know. First, you have you need the strength to fight, or the strength to say, you know what, I'm not accepting this. And that's the first step, and that's the big step. And then you have to have the courage and the strength to survive, you know. And once you have survived, and once you know that it is been possible for you to gain your voice, it is then your responsibility, your duty, but also your privilege to use your voice for others who have no voices. And that's
I don't know
why
if you can read my shirt today.
What
it
is
says,
it?
Use your power to empower.
Yes, exactly.
Which is what Vital Voices is all about. And quite frankly, Diane, that's why we love you so much, because that is what you do. I love one of the things that you do, where you get up in the morning and the first email that you send or first phone calls you make is always to benefit someone else. And
well,
it's a boomerang, right? It comes back to you.
Yes, absolutely. Connect, expand, inspire, and advocate is the things that, you know. And you always advocate, you know, it's either abuse, violence, of inequality, and within those three words you cover everything. And again, you know, I always say I've never met a woman who is not strong. It's unbelievable how much strength a woman can find on itself. And what is wonderful about Vital Voices is you give that. You give that confidence. It's not like you giving your strength. You just saying you have it and you get it out of them. So what is
one of the things I've learned from all these women over the years is that power expands the moment it's shared. It really is a boomerang. I've seen it. I mean, I'm a product of Vital Voices. I've been mentored by women like you, by women like Hillary, by women like Milan, who you talked about earlier, but also women all over the world who I learned from and inspired by. And also they've taught me what leadership is all about, right? And I think a lot of times these women like Kenya, like Penella, they don't grow up thinking I'm a leader, because they think a leader comes from a certain family, a leader holds a certain title. And one of the things, probably the most powerful things that we do for them is show them, almost putting a mirror up to them and say,
that's right.
You are, because you seek power to empower. You use your voice to give voice. I mean, you think about someone like Kenya's story. One of the things she told me recently is that the men in her community, didn't give her grief in terms of changing the way that they marry their daughters off or that they've stopped FGM. And I asked her, well, how were you able to do that? And she said, because they want their daughters to be like me.
That's right.
It gives me chills, And I mean, as you know, I've been doing this a long time, 23 years. I've been with Vital Voices since the beginning. I've grown up in it. I'm a product of it, but I continue to be inspired.
And you're relentless. You are relentless.
Well,
so
yeah, you gotta be.
Tell me now, what is it that you are doing today, and what is your goal for immediately or very near future?
Yeah. So obviously, in the midst of this global pandemic, like any other pandemic, women are disproportionately impacted, right? We know that there is a huge spike of domestic violence. We are seeing 15 million more cases, not total, more cases of violence against women every month because of this pandemic. Because you think about it, you've got a crisis, job loss, anxiety rises, and you're locked down. The services are limited because they had to close their doors because of the pandemic. It's just like the perfect recipe for abuse of women and girls. So you have that piece. You also have the piece that women are the majority of frontline healthcare workers. Women are 70% of healthcare workers, but they're the majority of those on the front lines because they're the nurses, right? They're the community leaders. We also see that obviously women are doing double duty, working in childcare and homeschooling, triple duty. And obviously, taking care of those who are sick right now. So I think this crisis has the potential and is going to set women's issues back. But you know me, as you say, I'm relentless. I don't accept that. And I want to look at the positive that we're seeing from this. And there are a couple bright spots. One of the bright spots is that people are finally understanding that the shadow pandemic, and actually this is not my word, this is the Secretary General of the UN, this is Guterres, this is what he said. He said the shadow pandemic of COVID is domestic violence.
I know.
And we need to make sure that we look at the two together.
In France, we have a minister of women, and so she passed the thing so that because they couldn't go when everybody was on a lockdown, they couldn't go to the police because the police was so busy arresting everyone to go inside the house, that they created center in the supermarket that you can go and
Yeah, I heard they also did that in pharmacies and had like a code word.
Right.
That
Pharmacies and supermarket, yeah. Domestic violence is very, 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 very strong in France.
Yeah.
Go figure. Yeah.
But,
all right.
To look at the bright spot in this crisis, though, I think what we're seeing, and you I know have seen this, that there have been all these great reports of the very few. There's only 7% of heads of state around the world are women, but they are the ones who are the most effective in leading us through this crisis.
Yes.
I am a huge fan of Jacinda Ardern, in New Zealand, and the way
And she's so beautiful.
she has so much compassion and empathy.
I know.
And those are not words that we typically think of when we think of a leader, but they're absolutely critical, particularly in crisis. I think people are starting to see that the way in which women lead is different and desperately needed in our world today.
All right, so let's use this space that we have today. What is the call of action? What do you want everyone to hear this? What is the call to action?
The call to action, I would say, is get involved with Vital Voices. A lot of people in this country don't know us because we are so active around the world, but we are also active here. So become a member of Vital Voices. But we have some really exciting plans afoot. You, of course, are the chair of our upcoming global headquarters for women's leadership. We have purchased a historic building in Washington, D.C., where we are planning to we are in the midst of creating the ultimate epicenter for women's leadership, the place for women who are solving the world's greatest challenges to come together. And I think right now we're craving that. But we also are coming together virtually right now because we can't come together in person. And so we are building an extraordinary community online of these voices. And this is why I say, come and join us, be part of this community. And it's very easy to do, just going to our website.
So
but I would also say that
vitalvoices.org.
What we need to do in this next decade, as we try to solve the UN Sustainable Development Goals and we see the huge challenge of climate, is to invest in these new leaders. Invest in the bold ideas that women have for moving us forward. And so we're really doubling down. We've made a bold commitment to, with our network of thousands of women and continuing to expand that network, to impact the lives of 1 billion people. We estimate that thus far, we've already impacted the lives of 50 million people through those 18,000 women. These are women who are changing laws, who are coming up with new inventions that are making people's lives better, lifting communities out of poverty. They're women who have impact and affects the lives not just of women, but also of men. They're making people's lives better. So we want to really expand the work that we are currently doing. Now, in this crisis, we've also set up a couple different funds because we knew it was really important to be able to respond. We set up a Voices of Resilience Fund, and certainly you can contribute to the fund. And that fund is going directly to women who are pivoting their businesses, their organizations to respond to this crisis. And I can tell you a couple great stories of women who are doing just that. But we also have an incredible fund called our Voices Against Violence Fund. It's an emergency assistance fund for victims who are, for women who are women who are victims of extreme forms of gender-based violence. And we've given more than 1,300 small grants out to these women through our network around the world of service providers to be sure that these women are supported in their darkest hour. We also work obviously at the policy level as well to change laws and make sure that we're getting resources into the hands of women before this happens. But I think it is really important to be there in the darkest hour, as you know, because she's one of your DVF awardees. Nadia Murad received
got the Nobel Prize.
Yes, but she received one of these grants a long time back. When she had first escaped ISIS after being tortured and raped and her family members killed. And it was her darkest hour. And it was just about getting a little bit of money to help rebuild her lives and the lives of her family. And through our network, we were able to identify her and support her. Now, Diane, I think I didn't even know that we supported her because all of this has to be kept completely private. And so although some members of my team knew, they take their job very seriously. And I didn't even learn that she was one of the ones that got that initial award until she won the Nobel Peace Prize. And I remember talking to her backstage at your awards and introducing myself. She says, Vital Voices, you have no idea what that support meant to me.
You see, that's what I hear all the time. It's like it's a little magic wand that travels the world and sparkles. It's not just compassion, it sparkles hope. it sparkles believe in themselves. And that is why I love so much Vital Voices. But also, please tell people that they can also help, not just by donating, but becoming part of the organization.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there are many ways to become part of it. I talked about becoming a member of our community, but also one of the things that we're always bringing into our network is global ambassadors, women who have great talents that they want to offer, women who want to become mentors. So I would say,
and women who want to assemble a few women and to listen to all of those stories. There's also a book called Vital Voices.
There's a book called Vital Voices. And there's actually a forthcoming book as well that, of course, you're featured in. We did this wonderful book, an exhibition that features 100 women who use their power to empower. And we've got you in there. We have Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We have Malala. We have Nadia Murad. We have Pamela, Kenya. Just extraordinary women, some you know, some you don't know, but all of whom have power, whatever form that takes. And they understand that we've got to redefine power and what it means to have it and to use it and to really lead change in the world.
Right.
So that'll come out in September. We also have our Global Leadership Awards. We do an annual event every year. I like to think of it as sort of like the Oscars for extraordinary women leaders. And we honor those unsung heroines.
And this happens in Washington, D.C.
In Washington, D.C. in the spring. Of course, this year we weren't able to have it, but we are planning to have it in September, and we're planning to have it virtual.
Oh, great. So everybody will be able to come.
So everybody will be able to get involved. And again, if you go to our website and join us, you can get
vitalvoices.org. Thank you, Alyse, and thank you for everything you do. You are a true champ and a wonderful, and I love that fire that you have and that you've had since you were a little girl, and that has transformed so many people's lives. Thank you.
Thank you too. Bye.